Hello and welcome to another episode of Soul Nectar show that talks about all things essence. And we like to hear the stories of people that have had amazing experiences so that we can be inspired and uplifted and maybe learn something by hearing from their moment or awakening of some kind to a greater truth, a greater knowing of themselves, a greater knowing of the world. And today I'm really excited to interview Ben Gioia. Welcome, Ben.
Thank you, Carrie. My pleasure to be here. And Gioia.
Gioia, Ben
Yeah,
Gioia. Oh, I'm so
yeah.
glad I know that now. Oh, there I see it. So
Totally
Ben,
okay.
yeah, Ben Gioia. It's spelled Gioia, and that
Yeah,
is pronounced Joya, which is
yeah,
Gioia.
yeah. It's one of the most troublesome last names I've ever seen anybody deal with throughout my entire life.
Bless you. So Ben is a two-time best-selling author and a speaker who's positioned global thought leaders, shifted culture at Fortune 100 companies, created a mindfulness video game, and helps kick ass heart-centered women change the world. He's the president of influencewithaheart.com and the founder of Influence with a Heart movement, a mindful, compassionate approach to leadership and innovation used by more than 23,000 people worldwide. So his website is influencewithaheart.com, and you'll be getting information in your show notes about that. And I love Ben, as you can tell, is just got a very compassionate. You can just, if you're watching on the video, you can see he's just got lots of love in his eyes. And if you're listening to iTunes, then you can probably hear he's got a lot of love in his voice. And so we're going to find out more about how did you become the kind of person that is so compassionate. And maybe you can tell us a story about something in your life that woke you up to a greater truth, maybe an awakening of your purpose, and you started down the path because of this. So tell us some juicy story about you.
Yeah, thank you, Carrie. I'm delighted to share this, and actually a two-part story, because the second part kind of needs the first part to really give the full scope of the of the insight and of the awakening. So I've been in India twice, and India is an amazing place. I recommend it to everyone. Be forewarned, it's wacky and wonderful and will test everything about you. um, and the first
Yay.
time, yeah. And the first time I was there, within the space of 72 hours, I faced death 4 times.
4 times in 72 hours?
Yeah, it was amazing. Like my bus almost going off literally a cliff, going up a mountain, and then running from a forest fire, and then encountering a poisonous snake, and then encountering a mountain lion. So,
I'm in
yeah,
awe. Wow.
yeah, yeah, me
Well, we're
too.
glad that you survived those four attempts at your life
Thank you.
in
Thank
rapid
you.
succession.
Me too, right? Yeah, I have a great story to tell. But, the funny thing is that was the kind of the first big awakening for me around my, first of all, gratitude for this gift of life, which is absolutely incredible. And then from there, my purpose, which was the desire to serve people in the best possible way and serve as many people as possible. And it's a great story because it's kind of exciting and dramatic and all those kinds of things. But the second story in India that happened in India is what I really, really want to share today. And found my way back there, hiking through the Himalayas, getting ready for a 9-day trek. So we're going to go 6 to 8 hours a day, and every other day we're going to go over a high pass of like 16,000 feet. So this is hard trekking, and I am not prepared for this because my hiking boots are in terrible shape. Super worn out soles, slippery, the whole deal. So I'm
Wow.
yeah, like really, this is well before I had any kind of awareness or meditation practice in my life. So I was like a full-on knucklehead.
You kind of just darting around from one thing to the next, like completely unconscious.
Totally, yeah, and lots of partying and lots of drugs, and kind of a very different relationship with life and myself. So getting ready for this trek, and I run around the town we're in. I'm like, does anybody have size 13 shoes? They're like, ha ha ha, absolutely not.
Oh, nobody has size 13 shoes, probably.
Yeah. Yeah. So I find my way to a cobbler on the street, and I said, hey, can you do something with my shoes? And he says, yeah, we can replace the soles with airplane tire rubber. And I'm like, huh, okay. So he does the work and it's amazing. Like, thank you so much. Beautiful. What do I owe you? And he said, before you pay me, why don't I fix these couple of other things on your shoes? And I'm thinking to myself, this guy is clearly, doing an upsell, but well deserved because he had done such great work. And I'd be delighted, to be able to support him some more. He does some work. And I didn't realize the implication of the work that he did until lunchtime of the first day of the hike, when I had two of the biggest blisters on each of my Achilles tendons.
Oh, and blister is not good when you're hiking at all, especially not starting out on a 9-day hike.
Yeah, it was, I took off my shoes, took off my socks, looked at the damage, looked up at the sky and, wept, first of all. And then I said, why me? Like, I'd come back to India for the second time. And a lot of it was because I had been partying way too much and I needed to get out of that, out of that habit and out of that mindset and really just, shake things up in my experience. So I'm like, why me? I keep doing the right thing, getting my act together. I had just volunteered for a month. Why me? Why me? Why me? Right? So much victim, so much story.
Yeah, I know that one. I know how to go into those victim stories. I do a really good job. I'm a good storyteller.
I hear you. I hear you. So yeah, so started the hike, or I had to continue the hike because really the only opportunity was to step forward, literally and figuratively, to keep moving. And every single step was just like, ow, 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 just wincing, miserable pain, step after step, minute after minute, after hour, day after day. And it really sucked. It was
That's not a
so,
very relaxing. Well, I don't imagine that a trip to the Himalayas is relaxing anyway. To take that trek, like it's kind of a brave, courageous trek, rather than like a relaxing jaunt through the woods.
it,
So, to then couple that with all this intense pain.
yeah, it was really something. And, but something really interesting started happening probably around the fourth day. I was looking at the mountain peaks around us. So we're at 12,000 feet and there's these 28,000 feet peaks, just everywhere you look are mountains.
So amazing.
Oh my God. So incredible. And looking up at them, and they look different to me, than they did the days before. And I'm like, why do they look different? I'm like, I'm not on drugs.
I know I'm not on drugs.
Right. Nothing else has been, happening. Like, what is the story? And I started realizing that all of those steps and all of that, that pain with every single step was actually grounding me in the present moment in a way that I had never been before in my life. Like I had probably never in my life spent that much continuous time in the present moment.
Wow.
Yeah. So suddenly, things were looking different. Like I instead of just looking at the mountains, like I was actually seeing them, like the majesty and the grandeur and the beauty and all of that stuff that you don't even have words for, that nature offers to us. Like it was really just such a, you know, enlightening, awakening experience unto itself. And so I continued walking and, started thinking about this, like, wow, this is pretty amazing. This is pretty cool. And, granted, the whole time I'm still like, ow, 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 every single step. But the experience was a little bit different because there was a lot less story of like, why me and when is this going to be over? And, I'm such a jerk for not fixing my shoes. And, I'm such a loser because, blah, 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 story, story, story. And I realized that what I was starting to really understand and grasp was the difference between pain and suffering,
Oh,
right? Like,
wow. How profound.
yeah, thank you. Yeah, so just realizing that, pain was the reality of the moment as I would take each step, but the suffering would happen with the story and with the self-judgment and, the trying to get myself out of the moment by when is this going to be over, all of that stuff. So when I stopped actually adding anything to the story and was just there with the experience, yes, it hurt, but that opened up all of this beautiful space for me to truly see all the beauty and the majesty around me.
You know what I love about what you're saying is that a lot of times when people talk about pain or something like they're coping with it, I've heard some people say, "Oh, I just distance myself from the pain, or I just abstracted, or I just, I ascended, or I leave my body, or I get out of it," right? But what you're actually saying is you didn't do that. You were actually in your body fully and totally present with the experience of the pain and with your surroundings.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a beautiful way to say that. And it's funny because wasn't consciously choosing at the beginning of that process, to consciously be with the pain. Like I was just kind of forced to be there.
Yeah,
Right?
because it
Every
hurts
single
because you got to
step.
keep walking
Right.
to keep up.
Yep. Yeah, but over time, right, like I was just really started seeing the benefit of that. And it really shifted not only my whole experience on that hike, but has impacted everything in my life and in my business from that point. So rather than running away what's happening in the moment, to actually be with it, right in the moment, to go, okay, this is the reality, whether it's pleasant or unpleasant, now that I'm with it and now that I'm experiencing it, I can now choose what I want to do about it or how I want to feel about it rather than just reacting to it.
Oh, that's such a good. I needed that message today. Yeah, I think I told you before we got on this call. Like today, I I had one of those days where it started off in a wacky way, as many of us do, right? Started off wacky. I had to kind of leap out of bed and go get my kids and to school, and I just left my nightie on, like I just threw on a coat, that kind of morning.
Yep. Yep.
And I'm like racing to the school, like as high as I can get it without getting a ticket, and just like squeeching around the corners and like trying to get him to school in this chaotic state. And that was totally reaction. Like every bit of that was reaction. So what did I attract to me? I attracted, more of that chaotic energy from other people, you know? And then that set off that chain reaction within me of the energy of like uncomfortable emotional energy because I'm emotionally centered.
Mm-hmm.
So I like to always let people know about human design type. If you check out your human design type, you start finding out like, why are some people so calm and cool with emotional energy? Because they're intellectually centered.
Yep.
They're not, they haven't like figured it out. Okay, like that's your job. You're the emotionally centered one that's having a big emotional experience. You get to experience that. So rather than try to run away from that experience, it's like to be with it, to be with the wave. For me it's like a wave, like emotional energy can be like a wave. And so like you're talking about pain, in your physical body, and I think we can also talk about pain in other ways. Pain can
Yep.
show up mentally, it can show up physically, it can show up emotionally, and it's really uncomfortable to have anger energy that you don't want. Like
Right.
you don't want that energy and there's nowhere to put it. And when you become conscious enough, you realize there's nowhere to put that energy, right?
Yep.
Just like you're realizing when you're in all this pain, like there's nowhere to put your story. Like there's nowhere, the story is pointless.
Mm-hmm.
And so what did you do with yourself realizing this story is pointless? This pain is here. I got to deal with it and not
Yeah.
react from it, right? Like not tell the story and not like blame it on someone else and not beat yourself up, all of that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And I had done, I had done that probably consistently for the first 4 days.
You just wore yourself out with that.
Pretty much. Yeah. And was not present to much of my experience because it was just like, God damn it. Why me? Why this? Why now? When is this going to end? Yada, yada, yada. And it was a really incredible experience not only to have the insights that I just shared, but also to realize like how liberating it was to actually not have to run away from my experience, right? Like I think in this culture, in many Western cultures, we are taught, to look toward the future, and a lot of us are taught directly or indirectly to spend a lot of time in the past, right? So we're hanging out in the past, regretting stuff. We're thinking about the future, which is causing anxiety, and we're missing what's happening right here, right now, which is where life, all the magic, all the goodness, compassion, intuition, wisdom, all of the juice is here. And so many of us, I'm one of the biggest poster children for that, just never learned it, in my experience. And it wasn't until I had this, you know, this,
A
oh
moment.
my God, experience that I
You know
kind of
what
went,
I'm
oh,
wondering
wait a
is
minute.
when you had that experience, when you had that shift,
Mhm.
did you feel like a dropping in of like a new way of being? I don't know if you know what I'm saying, but did you, like for me when I have some of those awakenings, it's like a key and a lock and it goes, okay, now I'm good. I don't need that experience anymore, or I don't need to like I just go back to that key and the lock and I can. Did you have something like that, like some kind of awakening like that?
Yeah. I didn't quite know it at the time, but I remember having the kind of somatic body experience of just relaxing, like I was probably standing up straighter than I had in the previous 4 days as well, right? So that was the kind of the first step of like, oh, okay. And then looking around, looking up around me, as I shared. But the what this led to, I didn't quite know at the time, but about a month later I did my first 10-day silent meditation retreat.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, which was a very, body based practice, breath and physical sensations. And, talk about having an opportunity to sit with pain and discomfort.
Yeah,
It was a gold mine.
internal. Yeah, gold mine. Well, and that is actually a teaching that I've recently, well, I've had it for a long time, but you know how you get the teaching and it goes deeper.
Yeah.
And then you think you've got it and then it goes deeper. And you realize there's more. So I keep having this deepening of this awareness of the importance of being with the uncomfortable feelings that get, because for me it's all feeling based, the
Mhm.
uncomfortable feelings that I'm having about whatever's up and it's out of my control in some way, because it's there, it's present, and it's big. And then I'm being with it without, and then now I'm coaching myself to not go down the tunnel of the story, right? So
Yeah.
it wants to go down a red wire story. It wants to like go down the story, and then it wants to make somebody wrong. So then it's like you can see it almost looking to make somebody wrong for the thing. It is like to just stay in the discomfort of that without going down the red wire, without making somebody wrong, but just to be with it and breathe. That's super challenging.
It really is. Yeah. I mean, I think it's one of the most powerful things we can do, and concurrently one of the most challenging things that we have the opportunity to do, right? Because it kicks up so much stuff. It's, like all of the obvious things of, I don't like the discomfort of this physical pain, this emotional pain, whatever it is. But I think also because it really makes us or invites us to take 100% responsibility for our experience. Like, this other person, this situation, can be a contributing vehicle to the experience, but how we're reacting or responding, is totally up to us.
Yes.
And I'm sure you've had this, and I've had this plenty of times. Like, I don't want to be responsible for how I'm feeling right now because so and so is a big schmuck.
Yeah, I totally want to throw it over there. And I can see like my ego is constantly twisting around. Like I've had several things since we had the full moon lunar eclipse, and you guys are watching this way after that. But those are big, powerful energies. Like when we have an eclipse, like the energy is just huge and it just magnifies everything. And it's for us, it's not against us, but it's uncomfortable because it sort of raises everything up to your awareness, and it presents situations and scenarios, my understanding of it, so that you will like see it even more clearly and become aware of it in yourself, this underlying current that's always there that you've just like figured out how to mask or not see or like stay on top of and not deal with, right?
Yep.
And I, I'm pretty good with my awareness, so a lot of times spirit's got to like yank me really hard up by the short hairs so that I'll like look at the thing. And so I've had several things this week since the big energy where like it's so tempting, like it's in my old me, I would have been like, well, because they did blah, 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 blah. And now we have to take all this extra effort and it's really hard on us. And then I can play the victim and I can be sad and I can be like, oh, it's your fault. And then I'm feeling angry because you started this. And I could go down that tunnel, but that's the old tunnel. And so now I'm like, no, I'm not playing that game anymore.
Yep.
I'm not playing that game with my ego. Nobody's to blame. I'm fully aware that spirit like sends whatever kind of scenarios your way that to disrupt your pattern so that you'll see the underneath stuff.
Yep.
So nobody's in control of it. We're all getting twisted around by this consciousness.
Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty amazing. One of my coaches, he talks a lot about the concept of surrender, right? And not surrender like giving up and hiding under the covers, but in that moment when there's all of that discomfort and what do I do? And I feel so, angry or triggered or whatever, the first thing to do is actually surrender. Take a breath and go, okay, like this is what's happening. Now what can I choose to, do or not do about it? And that whole perspective of surrender really, gave me another beautiful tool to use, on this wacky, wonderful adventure that we're all part of.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
it taught you how to, because you kind of had to be with it. You couldn't not be with the discomfort.
Yeah.
You don't like turn around one day in all by yourself. Like you got to keep going.
Yeah.
So that was a really wonderful gift from your soul. So now have you, I know that you had to do your silent retreat you were talking about.
Yeah.
And I've done a little bit of that. I haven't done a 10-day retreat, but I definitely know you face a lot of your inner stuff when you're on a silent retreat, like the discomfort, the ego wants to talk, it wants to like interact, it wants to distract, it wants to like, you know, do anything it can to not be present or, to not be witnessed. Like it wants
Yeah.
to be witnessed all the time.
Yeah.
So what were some of the things you learned through that experience that you now apply with your clients?
Yeah. So one is just the whole idea of that all of these things we're doing, whether it's meditation, self-awareness, appropriate affirmations, that they really are forms of practice, right? Someone once said the term to me, that's why they call it a spiritual practice and not a spiritual perfect, right?
So true.
Yeah, is because we have these continuous opportunities, as we grow and evolve and, unpack some of these things that are in our ways, we allow the deeper things to surface for us to face and unpack, and there's this, if we're evolving, picture like an ascending spiral, right? Like we're evolving, we're ascending, and we're also finding our way to similar situations again and again until we really take those lessons, and don't need them anymore. So, so practice was probably one of the biggest things. And I think another one was the idea of patience, and not so much patience of like, oh, hurry up. I'd like, I really want, Christmas to come soon. Like not that kind of patience, but more, there's an American philosopher named Guy Finley. And he talks about patience as, the ability to bear oneself and to bear one's experience. So as we have all these, difficult feelings that often lead to other things like self-judgment and don't I know better than to react, and aren't I such an awakened person that I should be able to handle this stuff, like all those things come in, the patience of bearing our own response to our own experience. That was a really, really big one for me as well.
Wow. The game gets up leveled when you
Mm-hmm.
step into being a mentor for others in this spiritual work.
Yep.
I know you know what I'm talking about. It gets up leveled, and everything you just said, like I'm realizing, like even this morning was a test to, okay, Carrie, here's why you always teach people to be grounded.
Mm.
Here's why you always teach people to fill their cup up. Here's why you always teach people to take a moment in the morning and like really collect themselves before they go about their day, like open sacred space, pray, create that time for themselves to connect with the greater presence that they are. And because it's important, because when you don't, when you're not in that centered space as you're talking about, when you're, and when then you're sort of letting, and I'll just confess, so in this morning, like I pretty much let my ego just sort of like climb out of bed and like get going with the day, like, and my ego is still my ego. Like it hasn't changed, and it has modified a little bit, but really what's modified is my ability to manage it, my
Mm.
ability to be in relationship with it.
Yep.
And it has gotten a little bit more, as I love myself, my ego relaxes more, but it's still my ego. And so it's still the same one it was like 20 years ago in my marriage. Like there's that ego. It's just I've learned how to manage it better. I've learned how to architect my life in such a way that I am in greater, well, more of a percentage of the time is led by my higher self.
Yep.
But when you don't be conscious, when you have those moments of like reacting, then what happens is that your ego gets that little opportunity to come out and show itself.
Yep.
And it's the same one you had. So then you can go into self-judgment, as somebody that's on this path, and you can be like, well, I thought I already figured that out. Like I already did this, or yes. And and all the things that you teach others, you've got to do yourself, like in spades. Like you've got to be grounded. You've got to be, shielded, or whatever your practices are. You've got to meditate. You've got to center. All the time. It's not like it's a practice, is what you're saying. So I'm just reinforcing that message. And when you don't, you find out why again that
Yep.
you need to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Thank you for saying all that. I think we had talked about this before the call, and I can't remember if the word came up during this discussion, but that idea of preparedness, right?
Yes.
Like hearkening back to not having the right boots.
Not
you
having the
know,
right boots, and
yeah.
like in the Himalayas, and like, oops, no size 13s.
Yeah, yeah. And in the example that you were just drawing, that we do all of those, let's say, morning rituals, to get ourselves ready for the day for what could happen. Like we may not encounter a challenging situation, but when that challenging situation sneaks up on us, right? Like the alarm clock doesn't go off and we have to jump out of bed. If we've been the more we've been practicing and building that muscle, the more we're able to instinctively and habitually drop into that space of presence and practice and shielding and whatever else we're doing for ourselves, right? It's like why the musicians, concert musicians, practice for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours, so that they can nail it, in that 5 minutes of performance in front of the audience, right? Because at that point they're completely out of their mind, literally, and just in their body, in that space, directly with their instrument, with the audience, and with spirit, or whatever they see and feel around them.
Yeah, and you're going to get thrown curveballs.
Yeah.
And you're probably going to get thrown curveballs when you're not prepared.
Yeah.
And I think, I mean, what a powerful lesson for me this morning about applying the tools no matter what, and not getting wrapped up in the cultural conditioning,
Yeah.
but like doing what you need first. We also talked about that, like the importance of paying attention to your inner world and making a choice based on what you actually need in that moment to show up as your best self might not be in alignment with meeting cultural expectations.
Yeah. Yeah. Cultural expectations of family and friends, right? Like it gets a little tricky sometimes because, people rely on us in certain ways and or have stories about, how they think we're going to behave. And sometimes when we, take a step back and really take a stand for what we need, sometimes other people are like, wait, hey, wait a minute. You're not supposed to be doing that. And it's like, no, yes, you are supposed to be doing that, because out of, not from what we do, but out of our being, like out of who we are, flows, what we do, how we can impact the world, what and who we attract to ourselves, right? It doesn't work in the opposite direction.
Yeah, and I think that sometimes when you, well, I know that every time you pray for something, you get it eventually, right?
Mhm.
So every time you pray for something, if you're not ready for it yet, you're given a set of experiences to grow you in your capacity to receive the thing that you've been praying for.
Yeah.
And sometimes it takes a long time to get it, depending on how far away you are and how many lessons you need in order to get to the thing you say you want.
Yep.
So I've been praying a lot, Ben, and you're going to laugh. I've been praying to be a way shower. So here you go. I've been getting all kinds of lessons um, to help me become the kind of person that can show the way.
Yep.
And sometimes showing the way means not doing it the way other people do it because it's not going to work very well.
Yeah.
And you've got to know yourself first and take that action to, especially once you realize that I think the more that you're on a spiritual path, the more personal power you end up having. And you're also able to move energy in ways that affect other people, have a bigger effect on other people.
Yeah.
So if you're allowing an old pattern to operate in your life and you've got this massive energy, that could have a negative impact on a lot of people around you,
Sure.
if you're not mindful of it. So there's this greater, with great power comes great responsibility. Where did that start? But like some quote from a movie or something. But like,
Yeah.
it's so true. With great power comes great responsibility.
Yep.
More responsibility to be mindful of how you're directing your own energy in your day, and then how you're going to show up in an interconnected way. Because that's another theme that's been showing up for me is as we're way showers and leaders in service, we are we are we're directing the flow of the energy through the interconnectedness of our world.
Yep.
And so you're leading the movement of compassion because that's an energy that you're wishing to direct through the flow of the interconnectedness that we are.
Yep. Well said. Yeah, and I appreciate everything that you just said, and I just wanted to call out. You talked about being the way shower and how that was basically creating an invitation for all sorts of experiences to come into your life, right? So I certainly recognize that sometimes that's a drag because it's like, okay, it's all, I'm dealing with all of this, but I think there's also a beauty in that beyond overcoming whatever that challenge is the ability to share the story of overcoming that challenge, because very often the story is what resonates with the person who doesn't quite have that experience yet or doesn't quite get it yet on the same level that you do. But story is the bridge that goes, hey, this thing that I'm talking about, right? This energy, this standing in the space of your heart, whatever you're going to call it, here's a story of what that looks like. And very often the story is what shows up, what they can really relate to, like the morning this morning of, oh my God, the alarm didn't go off and now I'm leaping out of bed, et cetera, et cetera. Even if, people who aren't so spiritually aware yet, who are, starting to walk that path, like they're going to get that because of the story. They might not quite get the experience yet. And I think that provides a beautiful, beautiful bridge of connectedness, of trust, of inspiration, and to show that, hey, even though I'm over here, so to speak, this much further down the path, and I don't mean that in a better or worse, but kind of way, but just, I've spent a little bit more time on this than you. It shows the other person that you're still a human being, and they can, take the step into who they are and what they need to do as well, because they're seeing you doing it too.
Yeah, and I thank you for saying that. I think that the new leader, like when I think of way showers and the conversations I've had on this show with people, is that we are vulnerable and transparent, which is really different than how leadership was before. You know, leadership before was there's this sort of idea that there's this guru and the guru is perfect and they're off in a distant mountain somewhere and they do everything correct.
Yeah.
They've just mastered life, you know, and then you're just go and sit at their feet and grovel, you know, and that is no longer like that's not what we're doing here. You know, the ones that came here that are, you know, the ones I always resonate with are the, you know, the way showers like yourself, and I feel the energy of it and I'm like, yes, that's a way shower. And it's, you know, it's an older soul that just came here to be an example, you know, so we walking through the mud with everybody else, you know, we're slogging through it too, and we're just trying to find some meaning and some way to ascend the earth's energy at this time.
Yep. Yeah, I appreciate you saying that a lot. You know, I sometimes come across, you know, books and or teachers and or, you know, spiritual movements that talk about, you know, you know, accessing, you know, like the seventh dimension of experience. And, you know, a person that we both know, Daniel Gutierrez, says, yeah, that's all well and good, but like we need to figure out how to walk on this earth first.
Yeah. I love Daniel because he's so pragmatic. It's so true. You're in
Yeah.
a body. There is no cloud, you know?
Right.
Like I love accessing all the dimensions too. I do it on Drum Journey Circle all the time, and I love having people and bringing them on these, you know, adventures and, you know, in their minds and going to all the dimensions. It's wonderful. And at some level, it's escapism if you're not bringing that wisdom back down into the body and
Yeah,
walking the earth with it.
exactly. Well said.
And that's the hard part. That's where the rubber meets the road, Ben, which
Mm.
is what we've been talking about today with your experience in the Himalayas and mine, although less exciting. Waking up for morning a little bit late and dropping the kids off in a flurry of, you know, angst, and noticing that what happens to the energy when you do that.
Yeah.
So yeah, consciousness. Being conscious means, you know, I always think of like consciousness when you hear that word and you go, wow, conscious. Yes, I'm so conscious, you know, greater consciousness. And then I think a lot of times we hear that or we see that and we think it's really lofty and like it's all clean and pure from like painful experience.
Yep.
I think what we just proved is that's not true.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, you know, many, you know, spiritual teachers, you know, worth their salt, as the expression goes, um, you know, advise us to not, you know, try to get away from what happens in our lives, right? Like, how can we be here? How can we walk on the earth? Like, you know, the Zen notion of, you know, carrying wood or chopping wood and carrying water, right? Like, it's all right here. The consciousness is right here. The enlightenment is right here. You know, all the waking up that we need to do is, you know, we have the access to it right here and right now.
And it's true. You have access to it right here and right now, because in that messy soup of all the reactions and you know, the witnessing and the awareness of, you know, all those moments you had on the trail and all those moments I had in the line, and it just like seeing it all happen and think that is the consciousness. That is, we are healing that within ourselves, and to become aware of it is uncomfortable, but that helps us to see what it is that we need to, you know, invest a little more time and effort into for ourselves and for others.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's so much in, you know, in walking the walk and talking the talk for real, right? Because, yeah, that's what other people will resonate with most, right? If they see us, you know, doing it, being it, offering it, slogging through it just like them, they'll go, okay, you know, I'm inspired by that person. I see that they're human just like me. You know, I think I can do that too. You know, let me start right now. You know, because I just got some brilliant insight from, you know, Carrie's alarm clock.
Yeah. Well, so now sitting here thinking about that, I wonder I'm still in my little shame tunnel over it. So, you know, so I'm
Mm,
gonna have to work my way out of that, just to be totally transparent.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, I know that good gold nuggets come from all of these things, and I welcome the gold nuggets, and they come whenever they're ready, you know. So some of
Right.
them have already come in this conversation. I'm very appreciative. And
Thank
I
you.
hope that everybody out there also learned a lot from this. So I know they're curious now, like, how do I work with Ben? So tell us more about how, what kind of, if you have an offer for people, and then how they work with you.
Yeah, thanks. So probably the easiest way to kind of get a big picture of me and get a whole bunch of value for yourself and your stuff is to visit my website influencewithaheart.com. And you can either go there or influencewithaheart.com/masterclass, and either way you'll find your way to a masterclass that I do almost every week. And I talk about how I positioned myself as a unique thought leader and had this record-breaking year in business without sacrificing my authenticity, integrity, or soul. So the way I work with people, and primarily kick-ass heart-based women, is to help them position themselves as the unique thought leaders they are, bring their message to the world, be able to influence the people and the cultures around them, and really stand in the power of their leadership, whether they call themselves leaders or not, right? Like, we all are leaders, and all we need to do is own it and step into it, because that's what the world really needs. That's what our businesses need. That's what the people that we serve need from us. So yeah, so I believe that, the more women wake up to their power, connect with their power, express themselves, their superpowers, their goodness in the world, the more the world will shift to where we all want it and need it to be.
Absolutely agree. And I just, I believe that too. I believe that women are the path, women coming into harmony with themselves,
Mhm.
and owning their power, and learning how to wield it in a compassionate, loving way for themselves and others
Yeah.
is the solution, and if you're a mom, as I know many of you are in my audience, you are a leader. You're a thought leader, because
Yeah.
you're leading thought, you're leading consciousness for your children, and you're probably involved in the school system, which means you're leading consciousness for other people too. So, you are a consciousness creator, just by virtue of being a mother. So you have that leadership, and it's an important role. It's a very important role, because what the world needs now is the fierce love of a mother. So
Yeah. Beautifully said.
yeah, thank you so much for your time, Ben. I loved this interview. I love
Thank
your
you.
whole energy and vibe is so calming and beautiful. It's wonderful, and it's soothing to my soul today. So I'm really glad that this interview was timed perfectly by the divine. So thank you all you guys for arranging this.
Yeah. Thank you, Carrie. It's been an honor and a pleasure.
Well, I always leave with kisses, Ben. So you're welcome to join me if you want, but I'm going to send them out. So here they come, everybody. Get ready for kisses. Mwah.
I
Love
love
you
that. Thank you.
guys. Yeah. See you next time on Soul Nectar Show.
Okay.
Bye,
Thanks,
everybody.
everybody. Bye.